Welcome to Today with Dr. J, where I give you the guidance and tools to figure out what works for you in your recovery. My name is Dr. D. Jaffe, and I'm here to help you live happier, more purposefully, and without limits. I tend to ruffle some feathers for doing this, but I do away with the notion of once an addict, always an addict, because I believe that anyone can beat their addiction with the right mindset, tools, support, and education. Nothing can stand in your way to success. You don't have to commit to anything but action. You don't have to have anything but motivation. Whether you want to quit, drink less, or simply become more mindful around mental health and addiction, I'm here for you. Sophie, I think you'd agree that boundaries were historically not one of your strong suits. Sophie was so loving and so caring and so about always helping everybody, or always at least loving everybody, that putting up boundaries felt to you, I believe, almost like inappropriate in a relationship. Like,
Well,
if I really
I
love
wasn't
somebody,
modeled any boundaries. So my mom didn't show me how to have boundaries, and I grew up with my mom. So she was a single mom, and she was addicted to her own thing. She definitely abused weed and had her vices, and she did the best she could to cope with having two small children at home and multiple jobs, and just did her best. And so she was coping, and part of her coping was just doing the best she could, which meant there was some dysfunctional behaviors modeled, including having zero boundaries with men, with us. She would tell me I was grounded for something, and then one day later it was convenient for me not to be grounded, so that I wasn't. So there was no consistency ever. And so that is what I grew up in. It's just like, it was a free for all. And as an adult, I only learned about boundaries by coming up against boundaries, walls.
so, but what it looked like on the outside when I met Sophie was Sophie's this really happy person. The same, like, I thought it was fake when I first met her, but then I've now known her for 18 years. So unless she's doing an incredibly good job of faking it, and just has like this other life where she's not happy, she's really this happy normally. But when I would see Sophie, well, first of all, she was in an abusive relationship, so she would escape from that. But aside from that, if Sophie was crying, if she came to me and she came to pick me up from graduate housing or anything like that, like if Sophie was crying, it was because she just talked to her mom. That was pretty much the only time, once you broke up with Keith. Which was a huge deviation, right? I see this person who's also always so happy-go-lucky, and then in other ways they're falling apart. And for years this continued. You'd say what, maybe the first 4 or 5 years that we knew each other, maybe even more. Eventually, Sophie had to put up a really hard boundary with her mom, which was so difficult for you. I mean, it literally essentially cutting her mother out of her life. Hard boundaries. And at the time when Sophie put the boundaries up, to be clear, I don't know that you knew you were ever going to have a good relationship with your mom.
I wasn't doing it with any intention of, I had no idea. I just knew I couldn't go on with the dysfunctional, like toxic way we were having a relationship. So for me, I was pregnant with Kai, who's now almost 11. And for me, I was like, I don't want her around my child. Like, this was like a huge, and that became the priority, was my child's well-being and my well-being as a mother. Like, it made no sense in that reality to have her a part of my life.
But by the way, listen to that, right? Sophie cared less about her own well-being because she wasn't doing it for herself. She wasn't able to say, I can't take on the pain. She did it because she didn't want her grandchild to grow up this way. And yet, was it 3-4 years later? Because then Leo was born. And so then now we had 2 children, and the grandmother still hadn't met them, really.
Like little bits, but not really.
But Sophie started feeling badly about it. And so she she talked to her mom again and said, look, I want you to be part of these children's lives, but there are going to be really big rules. There are 2 things that happen. Because there was so much distance for so long,
it healed.
There was some healing that happened inside of Sophie, but now Sophie had some room to work with in terms of, okay, what does reintegration look like? And it started out very slow.
And because of that distance, because I grew up in this toxic home where it was like so much dysfunction, I was just used to having her in my energy and in my world. But then when she was out for a couple of years, I was like, oh, life is really nice without that insanity. And so then with that space, I had the wherewithal and the awareness to be able to say, like, how much do I really want of her back in my life? And like, what does that look like? And so then, even though I had no one to guide me, I didn't have any support groups. I didn't have anyone to teach me what codependency was, or, you know, these toxic relationships, or even what a boundary was. I kind of figured it out on my own, but I figured it out like the hard way. And after a few years, I started to let her in. I'd go and visit and I'd say, okay, I'll see you from 10 to 12. And the kids go and nap at 12. So 10 to 12. And that felt doable and safe. And again, what was I doing? I was creating a boundary.
And also measurable. So one of the things that was really easy to note, the strictness and the self-care that comes from understanding what you truly need and essentially almost kind of demanding it.
Yeah.
Right. And when Sophie let her mom back in, it was allowed back in almost in this very gradual, not almost, in this very gradual way where there were multiple opportunities to test whether the boundary did what it was supposed to do. And that is to instill learning for her mom on how do we have a relationship? How do we communicate?
And it's been really beautiful.
It's been great. And now, I mean, her mom just stayed with us she
came for the holidays, not last year, but the year before. And I got to treat her and like spoil her, and she got to love on our children. We had a new baby girl. She was just like 1 year old. And so I got to just love on her, and I had no expectations. I needed nothing from her, but it took that reset because for so long, my happiness depended on her, and like, she's my mommy. And now it's like, I can mother myself. I'm good. I got this.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you found the lessons helpful in your recovery. Click below to like, comment, and subscribe. Plus, if you want to find out more about the work that we do at Ignited, visit IGNTD.com for more.